welcome to Spectrum Days, the podcast where we ruin our childhood memories of games we used to play. With me, Chris, and my cousin Phil.
Hello.
Hello, Phil.
We've got to say really good stuff about this game. There's none of your usual, I found it boring, or I just didn't understand it, or the keys are too complicated. Okay?
So what game are we going to try and remember today?
Yeah, we're going to try and remember Jet Pac. We all remember Jet Pac, don't we? Surely we all remember it.
I do remember Jet Pac. Before we get into Jet Pac, quick shout out to Gary. Again, Gary Arnott, thank you very much for the thumbnail for the last episodes. Thanks, we do appreciate that.
Especially for me, because I don't have to do it. So thank you, Gary. I love you, man. So,
let's get on to Jet Pac.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know what Jet Pac is, the two people out there, these young people that for some reason Chris thinks are listening to us, old farts going on about Spectrum games. It's an arcade-style shooter. Came out in 1983 on the Spectrum and the VIC-20. And when I was researching this and realised that it came out on the VIC-20, it put me in a bit of a quandary because I had the VIC-20 before I had the Spectrum. In fact, it was the first computer I owned. So I actually suddenly thought, I might have played this on the VIC-20 and not the Spectrum, and played it on the Spectrum much later on. But anyway, there we are. So it came out on the spec in the VIC-20, which was the Commodore computer, if you're not familiar with the VIC-20, and in 1984 on the BBC. So this, for once, I can't say my usual line of this came out on absolutely everything, because it didn't come out on that much. Obviously, being an early title, perhaps there weren't many platforms for it to come out on, but just the specky, the VIC-20 and the BBC, which I was surprised at. It's made by Ultimate, play the game. Basic idea was to shoot aliens as you fly around with your jetpack, picking up pieces of your rocket. Your rocket's been sort of split into various different bits on the screen, and you collect them. So you start with the base and then the middle and then the top. You pick them up, drop them, they drop onto top, and it sort of makes the rocket for you. Once you've made the rocket, then you pick up these bits of fuel that are lying around, and again, the same, you fly over the top of the ship, and they automatically, from memory, I think they automatically drop down and fill the ship till the ship is full of fuel. Once it is, it takes off, and you go to the next level, and it's pretty much the same again, the next level, once you've done that.
Really easy game then.
Yeah, easy. Yeah, I remember it being very, very easy. So don't you worry, Chris.
I am racking my memory, and I get a dreadful feeling that it wasn't that easy.
Well, it's quite an early one. It was 16. You worked on the 16K because you had the 16K Spectrum.
Yeah,
didn't you,
yeah.
initially?
So what we've learned being old people playing these old games is that the general attitude was to make these games as hard as possible right from the very first level, right? So, and now I'm thinking, I can't think that if I got very far in the game. I for sure played it. I would have been 10 or so when we had this game. Yeah. Definitely played it. I think it's a classic. It doesn't stick in my memory as well as Manic Miner. What I would like to know, though, is why is it called Jetpac without a K?
Jet Space Pac.
No, there is a follow-up. There is a follow-up.
Two.
And then there's been a recent kind of version as well.
Yeah, which I was shocked. I mean, there are a number of ways you can play the game, one of which I didn't realise. Even though I had the game, which was on the N64.
Really?
Yeah, it was hidden within. What's the monkey?
A rare game.
What's the monkey game? What's the gorilla? Donkey Kong. That's it. Donkey Kong. Well remembered, Chris. Your encyclopedic mind there.
Hey, what do you mean you fuck up my name? Are you some sort of idiot? Hey, I mean, look. It's on the tie, okay? DK, Donkey Kong. It's on the top of every arcade cabinet in the world. It's on every single game the Rare ever made. Okay, I'm everywhere. I'm more important than the guy whose name that's been stuck to my freaking arm. Okay, I might be part of the Super Mario bloody world, but it ain't nothing. Okay, I'm Donkey Kong. Okay, remember it, or I'm going to get you. And I'm bringing these bananas, and you won't like where they're going, punk.
Yeah, Donkey Kong 64. It was on Donkey. It was hidden, but yeah, because as you mentioned, yes, it is a rare game, and by rare game we don't mean that it's rare that you can't get hold of it. But Ultimate to play the game did eventually become the company Rare. It was the Stamper brothers, Chris and Tim Stamper, who were the writers and graphical artists on Jet Pac. They eventually turned into the production house and almighty team that made amazing games. I think probably most well known on the N64. The game was pretty popular, which is probably why it has featured on the Rare Replay. Got the Golden Joystick Award Game of the Year in 1983 when it came out. It's got 9 out of 10 in CMVG. Eurogamer did a retro review of it and gave it 9 out of 10 fairly recently. And it was voted 14th in Retro Gamer's list of 100 greatest games of all time, which is pretty amazing. It sold at the time over 300,000 copies. Apparently, I don't know how they know this, but it made about £1 million for Ultimate, which started them off and eventually becoming rare. Not rare, but rare.
Pounds?
Yeah, well, apparently, yeah. So the internet tells me.
So did you say there were, apart from being able to play it inside other games, were there any follow-ups? Or was it just Jetpac?
Well, there was Lunar Jetman, which I do vaguely remember. That's not the one I sort of remember playing. I think that was with vehicles this time, as opposed to the spaceship, I seem to remember. And Solar Jetman, but that was an NES game. Now, Solar Jetman, I do remember from the days of working in the shop. But obviously, by Jetpac and things like that, we wouldn't have been selling Spectrum games. But I do remember, Solar Jetman, the NES game. I can picture the packet, the box art for that. So I do remember that. That was 1990 that came out. So again, even by the time I was working in the shop, it was actually a fairly old game. But I do remember it vaguely.
And then I see that there's been some kind of homebrew indie versions later. In 2017, there was Jetpac Bob, based on the classic Jetpac. Yeah, Jetpac Bob. And then, using that code base, someone's gone and made a Jetpac Neo in 2021.
Jetpac Neo. Virtual reality version of Jetpac. Wow, imagine that.
That'd be nausea-inducing. So but you don't know the why it's called Jetpac without a K, then?
No, do you know that wasn't something that came up from my research. That wasn't something that was troubling me, Chris. I didn't think, we're doing the podcast about Jetpac. I'll look into the deep, meaningful reasons for why they called it Jetpac. But it was bleeding obvious because the guy's got a jetpack and he flies around with a jetpack. It didn't occur to me they've thrown it in a really funny way, like everyone did back in the 80s and 90s, with a Z and a K to make it look cool for the kids.
Well, later on they decided to rename it Jetman, Solar Jetman.
Yeah, well, that was follow-up day. Times move on, mate. Look, some of the other games we'd have been playing in other releases, I was looking at what came out in 1983. I mean, it's just, there's no way I can read all this out. We've already been talking about how these podcasts go on too long. There are a number of games that came out. Granny's Garden, Crazy Balloons, Frogger, Raider of the Cursed Mine, Bear Bother. Do you remember that? Bothering Bears? Cosmic Debris Dimension, Destructors, Morris Meets the Bikers. I think that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Piebald, Barmy Burgers, Killer Kong. See, Killer Kong.
How about Airwolf?
Manic Miner came out. Styx came out.
Game.
Both Matthew
Great
Smith games. Cassette 50. Do you remember that being advertised in all the magazines? Cassette 50. 50 great games. and they were all terrible. Just, oh dear. Hall of Things, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. See, here it's spelt cool. SNATCHAS exclamation mark. Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Snatchers. Do you think it's do you think it's because, you know, that we didn't have online dictionaries and
No, it's because they're
people
trying to be cool,
maybe they
man. It was the 80s. Duran Duran and all that. Scuba Dive. Scuba Dive came out in 1983. Black Hole.
Oh, Scuba Dive was good.
Pyramid.
Airwolf. Was Airwolf that year?
Diddums. Jumping Jack. Zip Zap. Zoom. Splat. Fred. Valhalla.
You just listed that. Oh, Valhalla. I definitely, yes.
Micro Mouse goes debugging. Now that sounds like a fun game.
There's nothing wrong with my game. Okay, there's nothing wrong with being a mouse. There's nothing wrong with debugging. You guys wouldn't have games if it weren't for us little mice debugging. You guys could do with a bit more debugging nowadays for your modern games that just get patched on day one instead of them being right out of the gate. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with my game. Better than jet crap.
So yeah, Chris, do you actually remember? Do you actually remember playing it?
I got a feeling of playing it. Like, I know I played it for sure, and I got this feeling it was quite difficult. But it doesn't stick out in my mind as much. I think as much as Manic Miner or even Horace or Turbo Spree Challenge or Match Day. Match Day, I used to play a lot of Match Day. But yeah, so I for sure played it, but nothing really sticks out except for an ominous feeling that it's difficult. But then that might be recency bias because everything that we've looked at has been incredibly difficult from back in the day. Everything, right? So, you know, that was their modus operandi. Let's make the game as difficult as possible in the first few seconds. I mean, no one's going to want the challenge of getting to late levels. Let's show them how difficult we can make it from the first level. So we'll see. But then again, but it wasn't like anger-inducing difficulty either. So I can't remember. What about you? What were your thoughts and memories of actually playing it?
Well, it's funny, we mentioned it off mic. It was mentioned to producer John, who's skulking around there in the background. And I did say I distinctly remember the sort of laser sound, and that the majority of the time you're having to shoot because the enemies, to echo what Chris has just said, yes, it is quite, I remember it being a fairly difficult game, and it's because the process is simple of putting the ship together, refueling it, bang, you're off. It's technically quite short. Each arcade stage is quite short, but you're being totally bombarded left and right by the enemies. So you are, I think, from memory, you are having to constantly shoot the whole time to sort of clear your way to get to these bits and pieces to put the ship together and put the fuel in. When researching it, this isn't a term that I would have known at the time, and certainly I didn't remember this function of the game, but it's described as being wraparound, so that you can go off one side and you appear the other, a bit like the gateway in Pac-Man, where you can go off the board and you come back on the other side. I didn't remember that I only, when researching it, I was like, oh, okay. And I've never heard the term wraparound. I didn't know what wraparound. I haven't come across that. So I now that sort of helped me form a picture in my mind of playing it, but I genuinely don't remember that you could do that. But when I had it, I bought it on the Spectrum. I got it on the Ricochet label, which is one of those sort of budget label, re-release type labels. So I bought it much later on. The Spectrum that I had was the 128. So I would have got this a lot, I don't know, probably 3 years after it came out, something like that. But yeah, looking on eBay, and I recently sold a lot of my Spectrum stuff. I say recently, probably a year or two ago now. For when I was researching this, I thought, I'll have a look, because as people know, we've got a YouTube channel, so I try and get at least some props for the video, some original games or a magazine or something to reference the game that we're looking at. And I thought, I'll have a look. Surely Jet Pac will be a dime a dozen. Everyone bought it. So I had a look, and good Lord, it's expensive. It really is a rare, in inverted commas, game, it would seem.
How expensive?
Well, you can buy, there's a Sinclair Research edition. So presumably, I don't know whether that one, I can't imagine that came out first. I would have thought Ultimates. But anyway, there was a Sinclair Research version, which is a silver top and black base with the Jet Pac man on the front cover. You'll probably see it if you look it up. I'll put it on the screen for those of you who are watching on a YouTube channel. That is going for around 150 quid. Yeah, what? I know. I know. Just the Ultimate Play the Game version, I suppose the standard version, I assume that it is going for around 20 quid.
Well, I'm looking at eBay right now, and I can see the ZX Spectrum Sinclair Research Original, and this is where all the confusion's coming from, because that definitely looks like Jet, then a space Pac.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. Well, what does the Ultimate... What's the Ultimate one?
The Ultimate one is Jet, and there's no space between the Pac.
Well, there we are then.
This is this is very, very important.
It is.
I mean,
it is.
Someone, please, we need to contact someone.
That's
there you go. On the Spectrum ROM cartridge version, that also looks like Jet Space Pac. So clearly they had it. And then the Ultimate version, there's no space between the Jet and the Pac.
Oh, yeah, we forgot to mention the ROM, didn't we? Yeah, it's one of the few titles that came out on the ROM, which I think plugged into the... one of the things that goes in the back of the Spectrum. I can't remember what it is. Someone can let us know. Yeah, well, no, there's an attachment you put in to the Spectrum, and then the ROM cartridge goes into that. Well, the interfaces. Is it Interface 2? Something like that. So, yeah, it's one of the few titles that come out on the ROM cartridge.
Well, I can't believe this. I'm looking now, and there's a version being sold from the UK, but it's got the Spanish instructions.
Helpful.
And it's going for $200.
Wow. So do let us know below. Have you got an original Jet Pac? Are you now scrabbling around your house trying to find your copy of Jet Pac? Are you phoning your parents now? Mum, can you go up in the loft? So yeah, the version I had was the Ricochet one. I think it was Ricochet. I'll put it up on the screen. I think it's got like a bullet going through the word Ricochet. And that was the version I had. Well, I assume that's not worth as much as, say, that would have been a $1.99 game anyway, much later on in the game's life. But yeah, I was pretty shocked, to say the least, when I looked that up, particularly the Sinclair Research version. That's just insane.
Right, what about the theme tune? Can you remember the theme tune?
No, I can just remember the lasers, which you'll find when you now hear the game. That's a very accurate rendition of it. I think the ship makes some sort of noise. I think the screen clears and the ship sort of takes off. And or I might be confusing that with when you do get the 24 lines in Tetris on the highest difficulty and higher speed, where you get the space shuttle taking off. That's very, very geeky, I know, but I might be confusing the two.
Well, I mean, maybe this is the moment we can actually go off and play the game.
Yes.
And stop struggling with our old memories.
Hello?
And
do you? Yeah, that's it, guys. We are now going to go off and play it. So join us in part 2. It'll only be a few seconds for you, what with the magic of editing. And don't forget, there is a link below if you're watching this on YouTube. You can click on there and go to the Internet Archive, where you can actually play the game and play along with us. So do join us for part 2, which will begin in but a few seconds. But for me and Chris and producer John, it'll be several days while we go off and try and play Jet Pac. And we're back. Welcome to part 2 of Spectrum Days, where we're looking at the mighty Jet Pac. Yeah, it's really good. I think that's all we need to say. On to the next game. What did you think, Chris?
There's a lot more to discuss. It was really good. I mean,
see, I told you. On to the next game.
It's really good. Why is Jetpac so much
do you
better
think people are going to want to really know what we think about it?
Not just they might want to know why we think.
Ah.
This has gone straight to my top 10. I mean, for retro games, this is it so far.
You've only played 11. This is our 12th podcast or something. It's not saying much that it's gone into your top 10.
Well, we've done some classics already.
Classics?
It's far better than any Mega Drive game that we've played. Riddle me that.
Well, thanks for watching the channel, all you Sega fans.
And it's not even nostalgia. I don't think this one is anything to do with nostalgia. It's just a real good game.
The first part of this podcast is nostalgia, where we're talking about it. You're saying all that people should ignore that. All that other stuff that you said.
No, but there's everyone can have their own opinion, but there's a lot of people saying that Airwolf was too hard. And
everyone, you mean?
And that Desert Strike was not boring. I ran a poll.
Desert Strike was great.
I ran a poll on Twitter, and they all said it was great. But personally, for me, they're looking through rose-tinted nostalgic glasses because I've played it recently and it was boring. And Jetpac is not boring.
Why did you really like Jetpac then? Why?
Well, I mean, again, we should have some kind of image, a map where for some notes where I could see what year and what month this game was made in. But a lot of the complaints we have about the other games are that there's, often there's no progression. Remember Manic Miner level 1 is so hard. Even the developer said he made the very first level hard so that you get to see how hard he could make it or something strange.
Yeah.
We saw in Desert Strike, you just seemed to have all of the weapons available right from the beginning. And it just seemed, okay, it got harder, but I think it was just staying awake, which was the hard thing about Desert Strike, playing that. But Jetpac is responsive. The way you float around the screen, it just works. It's so responsive. The collision detection is pretty good. And then the enemies just kind of ramp up. It's the first of these games where I feel that the difficulty level ramps up. So your very first level, the kind of asteroids that come on fly more or less horizontally. They do
one thing, don't they, basically?
Yeah, exactly. One thing. Then you go to the next level and you've got these kind of like...
Are they furry things?
Alien furry things, yeah.
The furry things, yes.
Is that like a reference to a Star Trek or...
Trouble with Tribbles?
Yeah. Well, we'd have to look up the dates.
Very local then. Trouble with Tribbles.
Hello there, it's me, William Shatner. You're probably surprised to find out that I sound like this. That's because I'm from the old West Country of England, and I'm not American at all. No, I was just pretending not to be on that there Star Trek. And in fact, that Leonard Nimoy, he's from Cornwall. Yeah, ha! Yeah, you wouldn't believe it, would you? But anyway, there you go. Tribbles, these furry little buggers that I'm surrounded by now. In fact, the construction team here down at Desilu, they just combed my back and made it out of my own hairs. So, just smells of my back. Anyway there, I love Jetpac. Good game that. I used to play it on the old VIC-20. Done an advert for that. Anyway, there you go. Jetpac. I expect I completed it because I'm bloody brilliant at everything.
You're probably not allowed to mention that. We'll probably have Desilu after us for mentioning copyrighted words. Sorry.
And it just kind of ramps up. It's really good. It's just a good game. It's
What's
enjoyable.
After the furries?
Furries, after the furries. Balloons, they wobble around a bit. Yeah.
And you got some fighter jets or something.
Yes.
But you're right, the AI is, there is an AI. there is an AI sort of programmed into each of these different enemies, isn't there? That they've got their own.
It's very grandiose, grandiose term for path. Path. They've just got their paths, and they've got some kind of logic of where they've got to go.
It changes that they react to where you are. It isn't like the balloons are just sort of floating around a bit, but like then when you get to like the fighter jet. They look like F-15 fighter jets. They sort of hover at the end of the screen, don't they? And then they shoot across when you're there. Things start homing in on you more. Things start learning where you are, because it's I found playing the game, there's a couple of different tactics. There isn't just one thing you do. It's not just shoot, get the things. You can use the top of the screen, hang around on the platforms, because that doesn't really change, does it? You got the 3 green platforms.
Yeah.
So you sort of stay on that middle one, and sort of you're almost guarding it. It almost becomes like a tower defense game, where you're sort of guarding that area and hope that the fuel pods don't land on the floor. Because if you land on the floor, then you've got to look for a gap in the enemies to get down to the bottom.
Yeah, there's some moments, though, when I quite liked them to come on the bottom and then use the Jetpac booster, just tapping it lightly on the floor, because that kind of speeds you up.
Yes, you sort of zoom around a bit.
Yeah. Exactly. So sometimes if they drop on the floor, then it's quicker to get them to your spaceship.
Yes.
And then sometimes... and then it's always that. It's always a lot of decisions, risk, reward. It's, do you let the fuel? Do you drop the fuel onto your spaceship from up on high, and it slowly drops down, which means you're on the screen longer, and you might get hit whilst it's dropping down? Or do you quickly shoot down yourself and deliver it right on the spaceship? Because that's a quicker delivery mechanism, let's say. So there's all these, and then of course you get the gold bars, and there's some other kind of bonus points that come up.
Yes,
and should you go for those?
It's
difficult it was difficult for me not to go for those. But it's just a joyful kind of game. I enjoyed it.
But this does perform like it did, and to echo what you're saying, the controls are good in it. If you die, it's your fault.
Sometimes I thought there was some collisions on the character's head that I was thinking, it didn't get me.
I think that's just Spectrum. I think that might just might be the technology, but the actual quality of the control of that main character is very, very good and very smooth.
Yeah, and
the gun is good, or laser cannon, or whatever. The weapon works really, really well.
Yeah, well, look at that as well. It's that you can have auto fire if you just keep the key pressed down, but it's not an infinite auto fire. It sort of stops. There is a cadence to the amount of shots, the kind of speed, and you can't just keep blasting. It does sort of stop, and that's just when the enemies then get through your blast. So the timings, they must have done a lot of gameplay to get these kind of parameters right? I mean, a little bit less. If you could shoot for a little bit longer in one burst, it might have made it a little bit easier. If you could shoot a little bit less in each burst, it would have made it that harder. So getting the quantity of the laser bursts you can get must have required quite a lot of testing and playing and things like that. So I think that's really good. I wonder if later levels, because although I did like the game a lot, I mean, I only got to the space shuttle, which is the next spaceship after the first rocket ship that you built. I wonder if the platforms ever do change.
The green platforms. I don't know that. I shall do some checking. Those of you who are watching on our YouTube channel are obviously watching footage of us playing it. I will see online, and I'll put on the screen now if it does change. But I'm not sure. I certainly don't remember as a kid it changing beyond what we saw that when we've been playing it this week. Again,
like I like it, and you're right, it's just as I remember it, but I don't really remember getting much further.
No.
So again, that kind of like, oh, it's great, but did I not have the patience to even play it for to keep going? I don't know.
I was going to say, I do wonder that, and I was wondering that when I was playing it, but I think you touched on this earlier on when you said about the bonuses and the things that you can pick up. This is still an arcade game where if you were sat there with your mate, it wouldn't necessarily have been, oh, I got to level 38, because there's no indication of level, particularly, per se.
Yeah.
It's about points.
Yeah.
That's why they're throwing these things at you. These bonus things to pick up.
Yeah, on the UI there, on the user interface, there is a 1-up high score and a 2-up. So and there is on the menu, right? You could play a 2-player. So you would have had your brother, your father, your whoever, your mate there, and you would have played 2 games. And
girlfriend in my case, but yeah.
Play Jet Pac.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Yeah. Good game.
It is.
Did you know? Why is the spaceship? Why is it called U1?
What spaceship?
In Jetpac, the game we played.
Oh, that game.
When you build the rocket, build the rocket, it says it's called U1.
What else are they going to call it?
And then when you build the space shuttle, it's called U2.
Oh, so there are levels.
Yeah, there you go.
I see. I didn't even spot that. Too busy doing something else.
Everyone's going to be so disappointed. So yeah, I mean, a strangely uplifting second half. In that it was a game that I enjoyed. I tried to play it on the on that portable console thing I've got.
What have you got?
The Anbernic.
Oh yeah.
But it didn't load. But I did play a little bit of Solar
Jetman?
Yes, that's the one.
Was that the one on the NES?
Yes. Yeah.
I haven't played that for a long time.
It's a bit different. Yeah, it's a bit different. You don't get to see the Jetpac Man until you blow your spaceship up and then he pops out. And it's not quite the same, but it's sort of similar. But I would have liked to have played a game like this. It's funny because I was also thinking, where is a space for a Jetpac game nowadays? What I mean is that I think this would be quite a good little hyper casual game on a mobile phone, right? On an iPhone, Android, whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it would work because you don't have a joystick or a real keyboard. So it'd have to be the screen. So it would be so much better. I mean, you'd have to have a virtual stick, which again, virtual sticks aren't that great. So we'd need left, right. You need to be able to fire.
Well, you'd have to continually fire, perhaps.
Maybe. But maybe there is I've not seen a game like this on the App Store. Maybe there is one like it, and I just haven't seen it. But yeah, this kind of game, because you wouldn't pay for this on a PC or on a console, right? But it's still fun for a few minutes.
I don't know. Did this get redone? Is there a new version of this, or I haven't checked it. Please do let us know if we're talking out of turn here, and it does exist in some modern form. Again, if you're watching the video, I might well have found it by then, and I'll put it on the screen. But let us know in the comments below. And also, we'd like to know what you think about this game. Is this a game that you've been playing regularly, if you're a fan of the Spectrum? Or like us, is this one that you'd sort of forgotten about and have come back to recently? Did you click on the link under our video and have a go at the game? We'd be interested to know, did you like it like me and Chris? It's nice to know that we've popped our liking cherry, and that Chris finally managed to join the ZX Spectrum Club, where he actually enjoys games again. Hopefully this will encourage him to play more games.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm already thinking it'd be good to have a game that I really hated on. I could rage, you know.
You want to you miss ranting, do you?
Miss ranting, yeah. Yeah, already now. It's just too nice. It was just too nice of an experience, Jetpac. It was good.
Well, that's why it's going for like £100 or something on flipping eBay.
Maybe. Yeah.
It must be.
Yeah.
It can't because it's rare. Surely everyone had it.
What about the sound?
What about it?
We haven't mentioned the sound. Yeah. It doesn't have. There's no theme tune, right? It's just a
I don't know. Is it?
No, I don't think so.
You get the ship going.
Yeah, it's more just the laser blast. That's all you get.
Pretty much.
It's a really good game. I like it. I like. Yeah, it's good.
You can tell
right.
it's the same guys that did Battletoads and eventually GoldenEye, and it's a rare thought. A rare thought. Excuse the pun. But there we are.
Yeah. Well, so if there is not much else for us to say about that, except for I'd give it like if there was a Spectrum Days kind of reward system, I'd give it a thumbs up if that existed.
Wow,
it's a thumbs up. It's a thumbs up from
technical system, isn't it?
It's a thumbs up from me. It's a thumbs up. What show? What was that? What show was that? Was it a TV show or a magazine? A thumbs up
the
from me.
Romans, wasn't it? Thumbs up or thumbs down. I don't think that was a TV show. I think it was a time in history, wasn't it?
Well, I give this a thumbs up. Most definitely.
I'll give it 7 out of 10. There we are.
I'll give it a thumbs up.
Right, you've got your system, I got mine.
Well, I'll give it 7.
All right,
does that
9 out of 9.5 out of 10? Oh, I don't know.
95%.
Yeah, 95. No, is that 9.5? Yeah, I suppose it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's the annoying thing, isn't it? Back then, it was 70% was average.
Yeah,
not 50%.
Back in the day,
never understood 50% meant it was a terrible game.
Yeah, of course. That's like 5 out of 10. That's like a thumbs in the middle.
It's like a thumbs,
no,
which would be average. Well, that's what I mean.
No, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
It's like,
yeah.
So this is
it's
well
like
over 70,
thumb starting to go down.
Oh God! Can we look? What's the next game? Let's just move on. We've established we found a really good game. What's next, Chris?
Yeah, go and play Jetpac. I think the next game we're going to play is one that everyone must have played. We're going to look at Tetris.
Shit. Jesus. Shit.
You can email us at hello@spectrumdays.com, and you can contact us on Twitter @SpectrumDaysPod. And you can also find us on YouTube just by looking up Spectrum Days.